Hey, this is Sonny Onoo, right here. I'm perched on the top rope.
It's me, it's the ROB, mobbing once again with my two dudes with attitude right here on Perched on the Top Rope.
Welcome everyone to Perched on the Top Rope. We are the two dudes with attitudes. I'm Lee, this is Alex, and joining us today is Sonny Onoo. Sonny, how you doing today?
Really good. I'm a little poor today, as Rob knows. I purchased a big purchase today, so yeah, I'm a little bit less money. I might have to go back to my Vince Russo gimmick, but we won't go into that right now.
Well, fans out there, Sonny Onoo, legendary manager in WCW. One of those he managed was Yuji Nagata, who we just recently saw on AEW Dynamite. Sonny, I know that you were in the audience. I saw on Twitter fans taking photos with you, and you had even posted a photo with yourself in the audience. And I know you were there with Rob. So one of the first things I got to ask, and something that can clear the air, the internet and dirt sheets got a hold of a photo with Yuji Nagata and Shinsuke Nakamura, who's obviously in WWE. And they had been posting that he was actually at an AEW meeting. Can you clear that up for everybody?
Yeah, it's so ridiculous, right? So relationship, it's is the core of pro wrestling in Japan, as far as business wise, and Nakamura-san, Shinsuke Nakamura, was one of the young boys that, as he was coming up, matter of fact, I met him about 12, 15 years ago, somewhere around there when I was in Japan, Korakuen Hall, went to see Yuji, and Nakamura was one of the young boys, or they call it young lions, the up and coming guys, and that's the first time I met Shinsuke, and since he was, Yuji was coming all the way to Florida, one of when I was communicating was with Yuji, and he said, hey, Shinsuke gonna come, maybe we can all go out to dinner or have a drink. And I said, that'd be great. Didn't think anything of it because, obviously I don't work for anybody at this point. So, what's really interesting is that until we started the angle of WCW versus WWF, people used to visit each other's locker rooms when they were in town. So I didn't really think of anything of it until the time, and Rob will attest to this for me, is that Yuji's flight was late. So Yuji called me up and said, hey, do you think you can go downstairs at the hotel, because Shinsuke is downstairs in a hotel, and maybe you can keep him company. I'm going to be about an hour or so late. So Rob and I grabbed Rob and we went downstairs, and here's Shinsuke, and we sit down and had a drink, and I didn't realize there was any issue until Chris Jericho joined us. We're all having, we're all amongst friends, and end of the day, we work with each other for many times. So one point, I think it was a Chris, right, Rob? I think Chris asked, hey, maybe we can get a picture. And Shinsuke said, probably not a good idea. Then at that point, I dawned on me that, that might be a problem. So none of us really asked, to take a picture with him. And till later on, we went out to dinner. Just a close group of us was Rocky Romero, Rob, myself, and the young man who was the what was his name?
He was the manager for Yuji at the in AEW.
Yeah,
when Yuji came out.
His name was Narita. His name was Narita. 24 years old, married with 2 children. That's how much we discussed while we're having a dinner. And Shinsuke took us out to dinner to a Korean barbecue. And the Korean lady was amazed that Rob can eat the hot Korean food.
It wasn't hot.
She even said to me in Korean, which I could understand, oh, he must be Korean, but he eats such a hot food That's why his eyes is so round. I guess my stand up needs a lot of work. But anyway, yeah. So yeah, that was it. I mean, no harm. And as soon as he drove us back to the hotel, Shinsuke had to drive back to Orlando because we're in Jacksonville, and that was it. It just kind of homage that Shinsuke made to Yuji for help grooming him when he was young, because that's how it works. And and that's I think that's where the photos that people are talking about. It's right in front of the hotel. We were nowhere near the arena, nowhere near anybody else. Matter of fact, like I said, Shinsuke refrained from taking a picture with anybody that was AEW. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for clearing that up. And knowing the fact that AEW, had that show going on with the match between Jon Moxley, Yuji Nagata, obviously who you once managed, Yuji Nagata. Was there any particular reason that AEW didn't put a spotlight on you when they were going through the crowd? Because they put a focus on Rocky Romero at one point, who's New Japan Pro Wrestling. They put a spotlight on Lance Archer, who at one point was in New Japan Pro Wrestling. Right. I'd have to assume they knew you were in the crowd. So was there any reason?
Because we met with some of their bookers. I mean, their bookers are the former WCW, Arn Anderson, and I mean, Dean Malenko. I mean, they're all dear friends of mine anyway, and I was there for other business, and I was in Florida for other business. So so when I found out Yuji was going to be there, and I just made it so that I was there at the same time, and killing 2 or 3 birds with one stone kind of thing, and they knew I was there and I was willing to help, but that's their call. Who, I think, being in business for a while, it was probably a missed opportunity. It wasn't like, but they didn't ask. They knew I was there. So, who knows? They might be saving me for, I mean, interesting thing is though that when AEW first started televising stuff, Tony Khan did contact me, and we were trying to work out a thing to bring Ultimate Dragon in. Mm-hmm. And at that point, I was going to be with it, manage him and be on camera with him. But, pandemic hits, he's stuck over in Japan. So, but the history I have with Yuji, every time Yuji was on, Turner Network television, except the last time for AEW, I was with him every time. So, I think it might have been a missed opportunity, but hey, it's not my call,
Right. It's just crazy to me too, because you would think, with all the opportunities that have been taken away because of the pandemic, you'd think that AEW has you there, and with your ties to the Turner Network, to Yuji Nagata, to WCW, that is basically what AEW is almost trying to encompass these days. You would think that would have been a no-brainer to put you on television.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know who their writers are, and I don't know what the objection was, or who knows? I mean, and I'm not privy to stuff that goes on. Matter of fact, Dean actually gave me 4 back pass tickets to the backstage, but we couldn't even go because they were taping back there, and let me tell you something. Those guys were working. The production people was working. Rob will tell you that night before, Tuesday night, from the Tuesday afternoon till probably about 1 a.m, they were actually wrestling and taping night before, and day of the event, their Dynamite event, after the camera went off, the live broadcast went off, they were taping till probably about at least till midnight
or more, because they taped last Wednesday show right after the 10 o'clock, and then they have AEW Dark that they tape after that. So they go to like 2 a.m.
Yeah, I mean, we were of course, we were all invited to the party afterward, but I don't think party was going to start till probably 2 a.m. So,
Yikes.
and since I had to catch a flight next morning, and so Rob and I bugged out and went back to Orlando, and somehow we ended up in downtown Orlando.
Nothing but the good spots. Nothing
Yeah.
but the good spots.
Rob was supposed to go home because he lives in Orlando, but somehow he ended up in my hotel room. I feel like a real cheap date because when I got up in the morning, the bed was messed up and he was gone, and he didn't leave me any notes or anything.
Rob Hockman, ladies and gentlemen.
That's it. I'm here all week.
Yeah. I was hoping for at least I get $100 bill on a nice. I got none of that either.
$100 bill for just the tip. Now, Sonny, I understand you were not only WCW manager, but you were also an international consultant, and you primarily worked with the New Japan Pro Wrestling WCW relationship. This is actually something when I interviewed Vince Russo, I had asked him about this, and he was kind of shocked because no one had asked him about this before. November 29th, 1999 on WCW Nitro, the episode was 219. Jushin Thunder Liger drops the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Championship to Juventud Guerrera. At any point, did Jushin Thunder Liger, New Japan Pro Wrestling, voice any concern to you or to Vince Russo? Because when I asked Vince Russo about it, he basically said that New Japan Pro Wrestling is bringing me talent with a championship. Then he's going to drop the title. Did anyone voice any concern to you about that?
Well, you know what? What was this? What part of 99?
It was November 1999.
Yeah, I was already gone.
Okay. All right.
Right after I was gone.
Okay.
So what would have happened is one of the reasons why WCW and New Japan has such a great relationship. It was a business wise. I won't go into a lot of detail, but business wise, it was a win-win deal. You got to remember Benoit, Malenko, Guerrero, even Scott Norton. Those guys were under New Japan contract, and their contract was like something like they'll work 20 weeks or 30 weeks, and that's what they get paid for. So outside of that, when they're back in the States, they can do other things, as long as it doesn't harm the image of New Japan. That's how their contract was. What Eric did, what we negotiate, was brilliant, because what we did was for the wrestlers was beneficial for them to get a contract, but it was contract for multi-year contract, right? But in that contract, we told the guys, the aforementioned guys, that don't misunderstand us. You're going to be working for WCW as well as New Japan because we're going to farm you out. So you're going to be working a lot of days, more days than you are now. But because of that, we're going to give you more money. And so, and now wrestler had a multi-year guarantee contract. They were happy. They were getting paid more, and they had a guarantee money. New Japan loved it because they got to jettison all that payroll.
Yeah.
And now they don't have to pay these guys, but they still got them. And on top of that, not only did they get Scott Norton, Chris Jericho, Benoit, and Malenko, they also have Kevin Nash. They also have Sting, Ric Flair, all these big names that they get to use for their big show. So, it's financial windfall for New Japan as well. And for WCW, we needed more talent. We were producing show left and right. Nitro was starting, went from 2 hour to 3 hours. Then we had Thunder. So we needed this talent, and not only the talent, but we got access to all the New Japan talent. Chono, Muda, Kanemoto, Kensuke Sasaki, Masa Saito, so it was just a good business. But reason that business hasn't been duplicated is because the relationship Eric Bischoff had with help of Brad Riggins, who worked for New Japan. Brad Riggins was a former AWA guy and worked at WWE for a little bit. And myself. So there was this trust and friendship that, never at any time did they ever talk to us about, please do this for us for this belt, that you holding it. They trusted us to do the right thing. So getting back to your original question of Russo not knowing, what was going on, he was benefiting from that trust that we had, the relationship we built up, in 4 or 5 years, that they could assure that we would take care of their guys and take care of their angles or their belts. And that's why Russo would have no idea how we're going to bring it back to them, how we're going to, he wouldn't have a clue. Unfortunately, he was there. That's why. And let me also tell you right after that, the New Japan, because part of that deal that I was explaining was New Japan was paying us one lump sum to be able to use our talent. Because let's say they save, $300,000-$400,000 a year from the payroll that they get to cut, because now they're on the WCW, the talent they get to use. And top of that, they get all the big stars, our big stars. So that was the, but for that, New Japan was paying us one lump sum to WCW.
Okay.
So,
Right.
And at that point in 2000, end of 99 and 2000, it was over $1 million that the New Japan was paying us.
Oh, wow.
So when Russo went, haywire on the his racist comment, guess what happened to New Japan? Making that statement, he lost at least $1 million in income.
Yeah, because what happened was a week later, Juventud Guerrera actually broke his arm, and Psychosis replaced Juventud Guerrera to defend the IWGP Championship the next week on Nitro. Jushin Thunder Liger won the belt back, and what I actually found interesting was the fact that New Japan Pro Wrestling didn't actually recognize the title change until 2007.
Wow.
So what would be your thoughts on that? Them choosing to not even recognize it until 10 years later.
Well, let me say this to you. New Japan has went on a record. I think you can find it, that as remember, Russo went on to work for TNA and other company afterward, and New Japan been on a record saying that as long as there's Vince Russo, we will not be working with it, wherever he's at. And that's direct from the statement he made about the Japanese and Mexicans.
Yep. I remember those comments.
Something to do with people's not giving defecation, human excrement kind of thing. I'm trying to be polite here. But listen, man, when you work for one of the largest entertainment company in the world, you can't be saying things like that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
And in this world in general today, it's just not accepted anymore.
A lot worse, especially now, but even back then, and even to this day, I was on Stevie Ray's show with him. I agreed to be on a show with him, and he got mad and walked off because I gave him an out, 20 years plus year later, I gave him an out of what he said, why he said it, and all he had to say was, hey, I was ignorant. I didn't know better. It's not what I meant, but no, he doubled down on it and tripled down on it, and saying, because I said, look, whether you realize or not, that's implicit bias, whether that's what it is. I mean, it's like, he doesn't know he's a bigot.
Yeah.
By nature of his statement, he's a bigot. And for him to double down and triple down, he can give all the excuses, but none of them can justify what he said.
Yep. No, you're 100% right. I'm not gonna disagree on that one, because
I think it's safe to say that Sonny's not on Vince's Christmas card list.
Yeah.
I get something from him every year, but I'm not sure what it is.
You don't open the paper bag.
No.
Got it. Got it.
So now that we're talking about the WCW and New Japan Pro Wrestling relationship, I believe this is going to be an excellent time to bring up Dark Side of the Ring Collision in Korea that actually just aired a few days ago. As we know, the largest wrestling event in the world to this day, 2 days, over 350,000 people attended. Whether they paid or were forced, it's is what it is, but still the largest show
wrestling show in history
that professional wrestling has ever seen, and quite the unique card. I gotta ask before we all start asking questions about this, Sonny. When it came to the Dark Side of the Ring, it primarily covered the American wrestlers being over in Korea.
Yeah.
Now, understanding that North Korea had kind of the same relationship they do with America, it very bad, rocky at best. How was the New Japan Pro Wrestling Stars treatment while in North Korea? Was it the same as the Americans? Was it a little different? How was the treatment?
I think the New Japan Pro Wrestling individuals, wrestlers, and officials understood how delicate he was.
Mm-hmm.
American, on the other hand, Scott Norton, Steiners, Tuco's, I, you know, I wouldn't have done it. Took those guys. I have a hard time taking those guys just to a regular bar, right? I mean, why would you take it to someplace where they might, they might start ripping your nails out if you say a wrong thing. But I was forewarned by U.S. government, Japanese embassy, Japanese consulate, the multiple they told me not to go. And you got to understand the history, right? I mean, I don't think people quite get it. We know if we have a mortal enemy, they're one of them, right? In North Korea, I mean, they teach their little kindergartners from 2-year-olds on up. They literally they give little kids the sticks to beat on the image of Americans, right? I mean, that's how it is over there.
Right.
So imagine all these people, and not that's American part, but the Japanese committed heinous, war crime. I mean, Japanese occupied Korea for I don't know how many years, but for a long time. They took all their, I mean, they were pretty brutal what they did,
Yeah.
No wonder one of the first things they asked me was don't rape our women. And I went like, yeah, really? Okay. That's one of the things they asked me when I got there. And I'm sure it wasn't just to me, but the rest of the Japanese, so, but I think certainly the Japanese wrestler is much more educated. Matter of fact, I know for a fact the Dark Side tried to reach out to some of the Japanese wrestlers that we went. Kensuke Sasaki, Akira Hokuto, they're married now. I mean, it's actually a sub story that a lot of people don't know. They fell in love with each other in North Korea. Came back to Japan and got married. And I mentioned that to the producers, and they reached out to Fuji TV because she's one of the television personality over there. And guess what? No Japanese wanted to be interviewed for this broadcast.
Oh wow!
Still way too close to North Korea.
Mm-hmm.
They have a missile that keeps landing over an ocean between them. So they don't want, and there's the history of 56 years of history of Japanese atrocity of Koreans and vice versa. So and they were like, no, thank you, we don't want nothing to do with it.
Right.
So but the American, like Scott Norton said, his wife that he was in South Korea partying every night.
Yeah.
But they told us though, Scott might not remember, they told us, hey, you guys, they're listening to everything we say. Everything. you know.
Right. Now, speaking of Scott Norton, if you watch Dark Side of the Ring, it's very well known that as far as individual incidents, he probably had one of the bigger negative incidents that happened while you guys were over there on the trip. Now, did you personally have any actual run-ins personally, aside from the comments they made when they first got you guys there, to the extent that Scott or say Too Cold Scorpio did
Well,
with the North Korean government?
yeah, you know what? I didn't witness Tuco Scorpio stealing chopsticks and making shanks. I, I, I don't think he helped himself or his how can I put this delicately? His image
Mhm.
of you know, his group of people talking about his dad, you know, dad taught him how to make a shank because he's from prison. I don't think that's kind of image you want to portray,
No.
but you know, but anyway, you know, he's being him. I don't know if that's, you know, I don't know if that happened. I didn't witness any of that, but I know what happened to Scott Norton, you know, um, that he got, you know, I mean, first of all, you can't make a phone call to North Korea. You can't.
Yeah.
Only way you can connect from, for that matter, only people stayed in that hotel. It was a big high rise, right?
Mhm.
It was just us. Hotel was just for us.
Okay.
Yeah, and Mike Chinoy, who was on the show as well, he told us, it says, you know, half this building out here, they built it for you guys. He said there's nothing inside. They're facades, like a Hollywood studio set.
Oh, wow.
I go, really? Yeah. And and you know, they told us that they're listening to everything we say, and you know, and they want to use us as a propaganda as well. And remember, as I said earlier, there already thinks that we're all the citizens of North Korea think we're baby eating, women raping heathens. That that's where they're taught. So imagine if you're, unfortunately there was a famine going on there at the time. So imagine if you're citizens of North Korea, you've been kind of indoctrinated that, you know, hey, these guys are, you know, devil himself, you know, they're demons. And imagine they never seen one before, Americans. And the first American you see is Scott Norton, Ric Flair, you know, Scott Steiner.
I was gonna
They
say
look,
they, Eric Bischoff himself talked about how in the Dark Side of the Ring he may have been one of the first Americans that, you know, North Korean children had actually seen in person when he went running that morning.
right. Well, you know, it's really funny because there's an interview on YouTube. I sent it to Rob, how they talk about the interview, the people who escaped from North Korea. These are like a lot of soldiers and stuff escaped. And they were interviewing these guys, and they were talking about how they were, you know, how they were taught to hate the Americans, and you know that they're mortal enemies, and so they asked him, well, what is your view of American before you came to, you know, the West? And they said blonde hair, big nose.
So Triple
And
H,
I said, well, or Ric Flair.
we heard that too.
Yeah, you know, he personifies, you know, the stereotype of decadent, you know, Americans that does not follow, you know, rule of law. You know, they do what they want and they eat babies, for God's sake. Come on.
Yeah.
You know, so that was their image. So, you know, imagine when Antonio Inoki defeated the representative of evil empire, Ric Flair, you know, the whole, you know, 180,000 people went nuts.
Well,
Yeah.
I guess it would beg the question, and you and I have never talked about this, but I've after watching the Dark Side of the Ring, it made me start to think they painted it as a peace going mission.
Peace
You guys
festival.
went over there, and New Japan went over there as like a peace effort or a peace going mission. But if North Korea felt that strongly about not only the American people, but the Japanese people. Who thought that was a great idea, that was actually going to go over as a peace mission?
Well, you remember the ping pong? You guys might be too young, but remember the ping pong diplomacy? Communist China was, was the United States' mortal enemy, and Nixon did this thing called ping pong diplomacy. They sent a team of ping pong players, because Chinese are really good at ping pong, and they use sports to open up the doors, so we could get to know the athletes, the individuals, and this was based on that. And this was all Antonio Inoki's idea. And Antonio Inoki was a politician who needed a little boost, so this was his idea to, and because of pro wrestling, Japanese iconic pro wrestling, Rikidozan was from North Korea, who was murdered by, I think Eric mentioned that on the dark side, was murdered by the Japanese mafia. He thought this would be a good way for us to go there, to humanize us. But I don't think Scott's, Norton or Steiner is good representative of American goodwill, ambassador.
No.
Well, here's a one other question that I thought of. Recently WWE has gone to Saudi Arabia to do, the different shows, and on a more recent show, one of the planes didn't get to take off. They kind of got held there.
Yeah.
By hook or by crook, and it wound up forcing WWE to rethink their plans as far as TV and things like that. Right. When this whole thing was coming to an end and you guys are traveling to the airport, did the thought ever cross your mind that maybe we're not going to get out of here, even though we're heading to the airport?
Well, only
especially after everything Scott Norton and Steiner and all of those guys did. Yeah. The van ride to the airport could take a detour.
Yeah. I mean, Scott, this was not on the show. I'll give you one. Scott Steiner, we had a state dinner. If you can imagine, huge, big banquet hall, tables, designated, people with a bunch of medals on their, jackets, and this was a state dinner, and one of the entertainment was these group of people that did a quick change artist. You know what I'm talking about? They would flip a fan, and next time they would have whole different clothes, right? Pretty impressive, and whatever reason, Scott Steiner thought, well, that's freaking cool. I'm gonna go find out how they do that. So he went to the backstage by himself, try to find out how they did it. And of course, he got escorted out very quickly. And if it wasn't for, we were there with Antonio Inoki, who we were there as a guest of the Kim Sang-il, the great leader. If it wasn't for them and Muhammad Ali, because that's what I kept thinking to myself, as long as I'm like, I hang around Muhammad, I think I'm gonna be all right. If they're taking me, they're gonna take Muhammad.
Okay.
that was what I was thinking.
That's actually leading into one of my next questions. Was Muhammad Ali treated differently by the North Koreans while he was over there?
He's a great ambassador, right? I mean, he's literally is one of the guys. Matter of fact, I don't think this would have been possible if it wasn't for Muhammad Ali going with us, because this all started by Inoki approaching Eric. Do you have access to Muhammad Ali? And we met in Denver. Ali, Inoki, myself, couple of Japanese dignitary, and a matter of fact, I have that photograph upstairs. And that's how he started. And from that, Inoki say, hey, if we can get Ali to go do this thing, we want to get some of you guys wrestlers get involved. And that's how the thing happened. Long as I stuck around Ali, I thought I was pretty safe.
Yeah.
Long as I didn't do anything. But, but after Scott Norton thing happened, we were like, ooh, this is really real. And this is really scary. And, wrestler was totally freaking out that they took our passport. But I kept saying, hey, if they give you back your passport, where are you going? You got DMZ to the south. You got minefield with the Chinese border to the north. It's not like you can get on a bus or train and go home. That's the only people that actually left North Korea, American that left North Korean live is, nobody.
Yeah.
We'll be the first one who get to go there and leave.
Yeah.
So just watch your P's and Q's. I mean, but I would genuinely tell you that on that story on the dark side, Ric Flair actually got on his knee when he got off the plane and kissed the tarmac.
Oh wow. Yeah.
I mean that's a shoot. And you got to remember they're also looking while we were there for 4 days. It seems like we were there for a lot longer, but Eric and I was isolated from the wrestlers, and we had this one secret, the secret police or secret service person called the translator.
Mhm.
And she was trying to re-educate us as well. You know what I mean? And we had a camera with us, and the camera was great because the guy looked like the Barry pack that he was wearing around his waist
Mhm.
looked like a Batman's utility pack. You know what I mean? No kidding. They had a light bulb over his shoulder that he held with one hand, and he had a camera, and he actually was doing this.
Oh wow, the little wine thing from the 50s.
Yeah. And so it was, and they would ask us questions, and they asked Eric, Mr. Bischoff. This is true because I heard it. Mr. Bischoff, they've been American dropped one bomb for every citizen of North Korea. Don't you think America should pay for their crime? And stuff like that. They were expecting us to give them a soundbite to help their propaganda. Well, they were asking me stuff like, don't you think Japanese should pay for all the atrocity, all the women they raped, and what my standard question was? Answer was, I wasn't born during the Korean War, and I live in Iowa. I have no idea what you're talking about.
Well, because I know they actually left this part out in Dark Side of the Ring. They asked Ric Flair why the United States fears North Korea so much, and this and that, and he basically flipped it around and kind of just reworded it and just thanked them for letting him be there and everything like that.
Well, no, what happened was they gave him a script for him to read before we left. When we got to the airport, or before we got to the airport, they gave him a script, and Rick said to Eric, I can't read this. And so he, and Rick was so afraid that if he didn't read it, read the script, that they wouldn't let him leave.
Yeah.
So, but as the pro that he is, he kind of danced around the thing and made his speech, thanked the great leader, and we got that plane and got the hell out of there.
Yeah.
And we party like no other when we got back to Nagoya.
Oh, I can believe
I'm
that.
telling you, I mean, that's the part that people don't, that's that part of dark side. When we got back, everybody party hard. I mean, they would, I mean, now that we look back, what happened to that kid, the Dornbeer or whatever his name is, what happened to him for stealing the poster? What Scott Norton got to believe that he's lucky to be alive. I mean, if he wasn't for Inoki and Ali, I think he would be, 100, 30-pound guy, if he's alive, he'd be working on a rock quarry somewhere in North Korea. I mean,
Wow.
it's pretty, I mean, I can't tell you how scary it could have been, and a lot of people ask me, why did you go? And I said, hey, Ali was going, Inoki was going. We were there as a guest of a great leader. And then on top of that, when am I going to get another chance to go?
Yeah. Right. And
the answer is never.
Yeah.
And I felt the same way. In 1986, I went to South Africa during apartheid, and the same deal. But I met de Klerk, who was the sports minister at the time. He became the president later on and eliminated apartheid. So,
Oh wow.
So I got to do. I mean, I'm happy that I did it.
Yeah.
But that's when you're young and adventurous and at age 40, my brain was totally formed yet.
Let me ask you one other question that maybe a portion of our younger audience may be wondering. Since you worked so hand in hand with Eric, and especially on something like this, were you privy to what the budgets may have been? Because you got to wonder what a Ric Flair or even a Scott Norton or a Scott Steiner or anybody was getting paid to go over there. Or did y'all didn't do it free of charge? Put your life in your hands pro bono.
Well, I don't know what the deal Rick got, because since he was a headliner, and he was, I think he could have said no, I don't want to go there. So I don't know. I'm not, I have no knowledge of that. But I know all New Japan guys was on the contract, so they got. I don't think they got any extra bonus. Might be possible, but I doubt it. And I think WCW guys was on the contract, that covers all that.
Wow.
So I don't think anybody got any bump. I mean, I could ask Scott next time when I talk to him, but I don't believe so.
That's one heck of $1,000 payday.
Right, because I was gonna say, at least with the WWE Saudi Arabia situation, those guys are getting paid extra.
Yeah.
To go
Yeah.
there.
Right.
That I don't know if I would have been able to do that though. It would not be able to go.
Well, now we know why Hogan said to Eric on Dark Side of the Ring, "That's one I can't make, brother."
Yeah. Well, and speaking of that, when it came to Hogan, obviously he's the all-American pro wrestler. We all know him for the red, white, and blue, say your prayers, take your vitamins, all that. If he would have went over, how do you think it would have gone for him?
Hulk is a pretty smart guy. I think he would have really watched his P's and Q's. He would have spent a lot of time with Ali, maximized that deal, that relationship. I think he would have, I think Rick didn't quite realize what he was getting into until we got there, probably. Then it was too late. But I will say this, not because you asked, but I think Ric Flair was perfect for that part, better than Hogan, because Flair was more of a heel anyway. Rick kind of personified. I mean, Hogan would have done the same thing, but I think Rick more so. The over the top robe, blonde hair, the big nose, which is their thing of their image of the devil himself, and Inoki played a part of representing North Korea. Although he's Japanese, but because of his, connection with Ricky Dozan and all that. I, to them, it was purely good against evil. They're the good guys and we're the bad guys. That's where they're taught. So, when Inoki goes over, it was a proof to them that, they are superior than Americans. That's what indoctrinated into their system. So, I couldn't imagine anybody else casting anybody else except Ric Flair.
And let's be honest, Hogan would have creative controlled his way out of that anyways. He would have body slammed Inoki and beat him in 3 seconds.
Yeah, then Hogan might still be there.
Yeah, I would agree to that. One of the things that they did on Dark Side of the Ring is they really made it seem like North Koreans really had no exposure to professional wrestling, or that they didn't really understand what they were seeing.
No.
So was this actually like the first of any sort of wrestling event in North Korea, even like within their own country with their own people?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
And Mayday Stadium, where we had the event, is the largest stadium in the world.
Yeah.
And it packed that place. And to educate what professional wrestling was, as actual combative event, right?
Mm-hmm.
So imagine if you never seen professional wrestling before. Imagine yourself as 12-year-old, never seen professional wrestling. And all of a sudden, your great leader says, well, you are going to be witness to this sporting event, this grand sporting event, good against evil. And what are they going to do? Well, they're going to fight. They're going to wrestle and they're going to fight. Okay. And imagine, think of yourself as 12-year-old. And for 45 days, 60 days prior to this event, there's only 3 TV channels in our hotel room. Mm-hmm. And there might be only 2 that is to the citizens of North Korea. One is nothing about news, the great leader and how great the North Koreans are and how they're going to defeat the evil South Koreans and, certainly the Americans and all that. And other channel, black and white pro wrestling. I saw more Gorgeous George on that North Korean TV than I have ever seen before. I mean, that's what they had. 24 hours a day, our TV channel was, their news about missile flying over, or watching, 1950 pro wrestling. So, if you're 12-year-old mentality and going to this thing, thinking that it's a actual combative sport, and I'm sure many intelligent North Koreans said, I'm sure they cracked their head a couple of times, goes, I don't know if that's real. They probably, first time you go to professional wrestling as an adult, you would ask some of those questions,
Yeah.
Can that big man, somebody weigh 300 pounds, get on turnbuckle and punch the other man in the head 10 times, without breaking their hand,
Yeah.
So I'm sure there was some of that, because I did get some official came on and asked me, nudge, kind of. He didn't really ask me because I'm sure they were told not to ask those questions.
Yeah.
To us, it's like asking a magician, we know you didn't really disappear. How do you do it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, but there was like, yeah, right. We know kind of look that we got, any windows, but they never did come out and ask us. So, I think he unfortunate thing was Inoki didn't get the pop that he wanted for his reelection, but forever he will be the man who made this thing happen,
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, Dennis Rodman has nothing on us.
Right.
Yeah, that's for sure.
We did it, 25 years ago.
Yeah, yeah, you beat him to the punchline on that one. Um, Earlier you had brought up that when it came to having American wrestlers go to that show, like the Scott Norton, Too Cold Scorpio, Hawk, the Steiner brothers. Was there other wrestlers in World Championship Wrestling that maybe yourself or Eric had thought of would have been a better fit to bring over, or were they the first ones that were asked?
Yeah, I think booking was done by New Japan because
Okay.
Scott Norton was, working a lot in New Japan. He was, he was their regulars. Tuco Scorpio, I'm not sure. We would have to ask Eric. I don't think he was a WCW contract. Actually, he was working in New Japan. So he
Okay.
might have been under the umbrella contract that we did, but I'm not sure about that. Um, the Steiner's brothers were, on the WCW contract.
Yep.
But you notice many Japanese star didn't go to that show. The Muda, Chono,
Yeah.
certainly Tenzan and Choshu didn't go. You know why Tenzan and Choshu didn't go? Because they're actually Koreans and they're South Koreans. So,
That's
you
a
know,
no. Yeah.
yeah, they would have never made it out of their life. So yeah, that's why they didn't go.
Okay.
You know,
I was just curious because when as soon as you said I don't think that they'd be a good representation, but they were there type deal, so it kind of just had me thinking maybe there was other people in line and they kind of turned it down type deal, or
yeah, I think booking was done by New Japan. You would have to ask Eric, but um, I believe that was the request that we got. So that's how I usually work. They request people for their show, and this is basically under their umbrella. So they would ask those talent, and I would clear that with office, make sure they weren't involved in our TVs or to interfere with our television, and we book them over there. So
Right. Now, speaking of good representation, it appears that there were a couple people that went on the trip that I would say necessarily weren't the greatest representatives of this agreement. And that would be Too Cold Scorpio and Road Warrior Hawk. Now, they in Dark Side of the Ring, they go into the issues that the two of them had back and forth throughout the whole entire trip. The biggest issue being the fight on the bus. Now, I was just curious as to whether if you were there in person, and if you were, what your take on what transpired on the bus.
no, I was isolated. We had our own Mercedes, uh, uh, and mind you, when we fly over, there's an 8-lane highway coming out of the city,
Mhm.
and I'm looking down because they kind of give us a tour of a city. They flew by the city. They flew by the city, and one of the first thing I noticed that there was no green because there were famine was going on, and no cars. I didn't see a car. It's middle of the day. So, and it's an 8-lane highway.
yeah.
And I asked, or actually I was told by our translator, Secret Service person, that the reason why it's designed that way is so that when American come and bombs our airfield, so their fighter can still land, use the highway as an airstrip. Flat out, that's what she said to me. Um, um, what was it? What was the question? I'm sorry.
Just the issues between Too Cold Scorpio and Road Warrior
Yeah.
Hawk throughout the trip, and if you were there for any of it, or
Yeah, yeah. So we were Eric and I was on. They gave us, the translator, the driver. Eric and I is basically we had 190D Mercedes diesel, probably 1964 kind of vehicle that we were riding on. That was their best car that they could, that's the best. And they had about 10 of those for us, for Ali and Inokis and some of the Japanese officials. Um, so I didn't see the fight, but I heard about it right afterward. Um, and I don't know if you ever, Rob probably seen a couple of fights between wrestlers. They usually don't get very far. There's usually this and usually a pull apart.
Yeah.
And they almost everybody expects the pull apart. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
I mean, even the guy who picks a fight or guy who's fighting expects to pull apart. So nobody really gets in there. And I listen, I didn't see it, but I saw Hawk afterward. And I didn't see any black eyes. I didn't see any eyeball hanging out. So I don't know how much damage was done. Like I said, I didn't witness it, so I don't know. But I also know that Hawk was really sick. He was, he had a hepatitis and he was doing a lot of interferon treatment. So he wasn't himself. Let's put it that way. But I will tell you this: no disrespect to Tuco Scorpio, but Hawk is the bouncer from Minneapolis.
Yeah.
He's a pretty tough guy. Him and Masasaito in Tokyo one time took on the Nebraska football team for Japan Bowl. Nebraska football team was there, and one of the guys happened in Roppongi. One of the guy, as the elevator is closing, Masa and Hawk is going down the elevator, and if Japanese elevator, you can fit 4 regular person is about it. And imagine Masa Saito and Hawk in an elevator, that's takes up all the room. And Masa was married to an American, his first wife. And one of the football kids said something to her as the door is closing. I mean, you can write the story. I mean, Hawk stops the door, opens up the door, and here they go. Masa Saito snapped 6 ankles. Because remember his gimmick was he would get a toe hold and he get people's ankle. And that's a shoot move, he snaps people's ankle. He snapped about 6 ankles that night. And they took on the whole football, whoever the group of football team. I'm sure there was more than a dozen of them. And mind you, those 6 guys didn't play on Japan Bowl. Kind of hard to play football when your ankle snapped. But but I'm just saying he's a tough guy.
Yeah.
So I don't know how much Benoit can really talk about it. He's gone. Hawk is gone. So I mean who knows? Truth lies somewhere.
Yeah, there's always 3 sides to the story. Their side, the truth.
Right.
We'll take it for we'll take it. One thing I did not ask, and I meant to, was during the planning of this event, of the collision in Korea, with you being an international consultant for WCW, how much of that process were you involved with the planning of everything?
I mean, only thing I was involved was just make clear the talent. And my stuff was pretty easy. I would go to the booking guys and say, hey, we're going to be gone from such a date to such date. And Scott was such a mainstay of New Japan anyway. Scott Norton was. So, only people really had to clear was obviously Ric Flair and that was Eric's department, and so it was, I didn't have to do a lot,
Okay. All right.
Yeah. But I will tell you this much. When we got on that plane in Nagoya, which was their military plane, North Korean military plane, and this is another thing that Tuco said that I don't really remember. Mind you, if you fly from Nagoya to Pyongyang, which is right over the what is it, 36 parallel, where the DMZ is, we don't fly the south. North Korean plane does not fly into South Korea and go north. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They will fly from Japan and stay on their side of fly zone. So when he said there was a gun pointing this way and gun pointing that way, yeah, I didn't see it. and I don't think we would have been able to see it.
Okay.
So, so maybe that's something that, he saw in a movie somewhere. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. Maybe he did see it. I'm not saying he didn't. I'm just saying, we certainly didn't fly over DMZ. I can tell you that,
Okay. Yeah.
So, but I will tell you on that plane, mind you, when we got in the plane, these guys all flew first class on Delta to get to Japan.
Mm-hmm.
And we get to Japan and we're on like this fixed kind of wing plane. And, I was lucky enough to sit in what they call first class. And, we're all kind of bitching about the seats and, I mean, these guys will bitch about regular coach seat. Imagine what what they were bitching about the North Korean seats.
Yeah.
And, there wasn't much padding to it. And so, we're kind of, okay. Okay. They started the engine plane. We're going to take off. And so we go, okay, the seatbelt. Do you guys have seatbelt? Okay, no, still no seatbelts.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, if we're gonna crash, I guess seatbelt wouldn't have helped anyway. But
Yeah. One of my favorite things that Rob likes to talk about, especially on Sundays, is WWE's Most Wanted Treasures.
My favorite show, although tonight is the ratings have been so bad, they're gonna go backstage with Undertaker and Kane.
Yes. And I have an understanding that Sonny Onoo, you will actually be on that show.
Yes.
And
At least I'm scheduled to be on it. I don't know. They might cut me here. They might blur my face. You know what I mean?
At least one company's acknowledging him.
no.
Wow, there's an AEW jab.
Oh.
Come on, we already had Freddie Prinze Jr. on us about Rob. We don't need
Tony
need,
Khan's gonna be tweeting you tomorrow.
We don't need this much.
The first YouTube channel he got rid of.
Yeah. So Sonny, I got to ask, how did that? I tried out for that show. I have the only outfit of Steve Lombardi's Abe Knuckleball Schwartz outfit, which obviously nobody in Most Wanted Treasures wanted to hear about that. But my understanding is you had or have, depending on how the episode went, you have something very, very important that belonged to Andre the Giant.
Yes. I have the opportunity to get my hands on the mask that Rob been asking me ever since I met him. I think maybe the third thing he asked me was, "Hey, you worked in Japan. You ever seen the mask, the machine mask?" And I would go, "No, I don't know. What are you talking about?" And but I totally forgot about that. I had this mask. So what happened is it's probably 94, 95 when Paul Wright first came into WCW. So angle they created was the Paul Wright was the Andre the Giant's son. So to get that message through, they were trying to figure out a way to introduce him. And Brian Adams approached me and says, "Hey, what I have this mask. Why don't you take this mask, the Under the Giant mask, and let's, he gave me this idea of put it on Paul, introduce him on the show. Of course, everybody gonna say, oh my God, it's it's a giant machine. Of course, everybody knows Andre, so it can't be Andre, but stature wise and he will be the reincarnation of the Andre the Giant machine. And then subsequent afterward, the mask will come off. Paul Wright will get introduced as Andre the Giant's son.
Mhm.
So that was a premises to bring Paul Wright into the company. I pitched that to I told Brian, I said, yeah, that's a great idea. I will go to um, uh, Kevin Sullivan, the booker at the time. And Kevin was always very good about understanding history and, Japan and all that stuff. So Kevin said, man, that's just such a great idea. But I think currently we have something like 5 or 6 lawsuits going on between WCW and WWE, about the namesake, the talent infringement, all that stuff. So they didn't want to do another lawsuit. Although the giant machine, but I said to him, yeah, but the giant machine was a New Japan idea that they took to WWE when these guys went over. So I think the rights belong to New Japan, but they didn't want to, they didn't want to fight over it. So it got scratched. I took that mask, threw in a bag, and sit in my warehouse for like 20 years,
Oh, wow.
25 years.
Wow.
And Rob, meanwhile, keep bugging me. Have you ever seen this mask that looked like this? I said, yeah, I've seen it before, but I don't know. I don't know. One day I sold something, a t-shirt or something. And I went to my warehouse and I was looking for looking for what I sold, and I found the bag and I go, oh, what's in here? And there was a mask. And that's
wow.
when I text Rob and goes, Rob, look what I found. Rob pooped his pants and dropped his drink.
I did. I wanted my hands on that in the worst way.
And I said, well, so I told Rob the story of Brian Adams giving me. Of course, Rob can't leave anything alone, so he went out and did an extensive study of the mask. He went on to go talk to the Mr. White, and show
Timmy
him
White. Timmy White, referee.
Who was Andre the Giant right hand man, and showed him the picture and got Timmy to cry a little bit and says, "Oh my God!" And then Rob went on beyond that to authenticate the mask by going to and get a recording from
with Bill Eadie.
Bill Eadie, and Bill Eadie filled in the gap how Brian Adams got the mask. You can tell that part of the story.
He said that they had finished up in the Cow Palace, and when they finished wrestling in the Cow Palace, they were in the back in the locker rooms, and they hung their masks up to dry because they were obviously sweaty. And when they went in to take a shower, Bill Eadie and Andre, Brian Adams thought it was funny to rib the boys, and he stole the 2 machine masks and stuck them in his bag. And because these masks were from Japan and they needed them really, really quick, they wound up having to scrap the machine gimmick shortly thereafter. And obviously then Andre gets reinstated. He becomes the evil Andre the Giant to challenge Hulk Hogan at WrestleMania 3. And the masks were never seen again until WCW.
Yeah.
Wow, that is quite incredible. Sonny, where can fans find you on social media?
Aside from Pornhub, I am. I didn't even know what that was till just recently, actually. But
now you know what he was doing in his hotel room in Orlando last week.
right.
What's this website?
Yeah. Rob, did you use my phone?
I was actually. I did.
But no, Facebook is probably easiest. I have Twitter and other stuff on social media, but the Facebook, Sonny Onoo, I'm the selfie main man, and oh, look at that! Look at the selfie mask.
Yeah.
That's Sonny Onoo's selfie smile mask.
It's authentic, and even Britt Baker wore it.
Yeah.
Gosh.
Well, Sonny, where can you get the Sonny Onoo mask?
Yeah, just DM me on Facebook, and I'll send you one. We'll get you one, and we'll a small charge. We'll get one out to you. And
Awesome.
you see, I have these winter gaiters. Let's see.
Ooh.
It's just what you want to be walking around Walmart in.
Yeah.
But Britt Baker looked, she looked wonderful, and because she's a dentist, right? So
There isn't anything Britt Baker could look bad in. Nothing.
Yeah, don't get him started on Britt Baker. Don't get Rob started on Britt Baker. The rest of the show we'll talk about her. Sonny, normally I wouldn't do this, but in WCW, I was a huge fan when you were with Psychosis, La Parka,
Yeah.
Ultimo Dragon, Yuji Nagata. I want to do something to end this show. You're always, when you were a manager in WCW, you were always known for taking the selfie. If you don't mind, I'd like to turn around and take a selfie with you.
All right. I don't know how we're gonna do this, but
I did this with Rob the first time I worked with Rob, so I want to do this.
all right.
2, 3. Awesome.
All right.
Sonny, we had a great time with you today. We know that you normally don't do a lot of podcasts. We'd love to have you come back on again and talk with us and hang out with Rob if you guys can handle that. I know you guys get enough of each other on Fight TV, doing the announcing with
Yes.
DDT Pro. Sonny, we had a fantastic time. We'd love to thank you for taking the time out of your day to speak with us and hang out with us. And we look forward to doing this again in the future.
Absolutely. And next time when I come, we can talk about this.
UFC. Wait a minute. Get more time on the clock. We can't stop now.
No, it's always better to leave everybody hanging. For the next time, we'll talk about my martial arts and my UFC connection.
There you go, ladies and
Part
gentlemen.
2 coming your way soon.
We've got part 2 with Sonny Onoo coming soon. We'll work those details out.
All right, man. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you. Guys, remember, spoiler freeze, the way to be.
Way to be.
We're out.
Peace.
Hey everyone, thanks for watching that video. If you liked what you saw, make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can get all our content here at Perched on the Top Rope. And fans, remember, spoiler freeze, the way to be. I'm out.